Hello and welcome to DDOCast episode 340, recorded live on June 15th. I'm your host Patrick. With me this week we have returning with us Voodu.
Hey everyone.
And we have a brand new guest from Galanda, right, Lich?
Yeah, Galanda.
So we got Lich here representing Galanda. Welcome, sir. Today's screenshot is Sinful Moon fights Mephits in the 170th screenshot of the week. Pretty sure that's in the desert. A nice little screenshot there. We like to talk about Dungeons & Dragons nearly every weekend. You can catch us through Google+, Hangouts, YouTube, or from our website at DDOCast.com. DDOCast is hosted by Cyber Ears, the awesome podcast hosting network. Shows are usually available within a few days of recording. The next show will probably be next Saturday in the morning Pacific time. You can stay updated by following us on social media, or you can find us at DDOCast.com, particularly with our calendar. It's a pretty good way to follow along. On the podcast this week, we have Update 22 has been released, so we'll talk a little bit about that. We have some upcoming changes that are kind of in the design phase. We'll be talking about leading PUGs as part of our PUG series to wrap that series up. And we also have our new guest, Lich. Lich, why don't you spend a few moments, introduce us to you, let us know what you like to play, and anything else you want to note?
Cool. Where to start? I've been playing since beta on and off. I'll take a few breaks now and again to play other games. Been playing first-person shooters, so that naturally translates to a natural love for the Artificer. So that's my main Lich on Galanda. And all my alts are some form of Lich, like my Cleric's Lich Dust. My what used to be Rogue and now Throwing build is Lich Claw. Just a few others. But I mainly play like epic stuff, 20 up. 1 to 20 is something that gets a little bit old after you've been playing for, 7 years. So, yeah, mostly epic stuff and just using the new 3-Barrel Cove stuff to get some ERs in. It's really good XP. And the Slayer area is really fun.
Yeah, the airships are a lot of fun to shoot at. With that, we'll talk about Update 22. It is live now. There are a few. We've kind of talked about the release notes over the last several shows, but just some stuff to note that might be new for folks. The sagas are fixed, so you can do that, and the Hall of Mark has also been reopened, so you can do that as well. And one thing they didn't kind of share with folks that got a little bit lost in all the shuffle. Single weapon fighting is exclusive with 2-weapon fighting as well as 2-handed fighting. It's currently a bug that Rangers can get both. They're going to fix that. I have no idea what that means. It sounds like that means if you're a Ranger, you can't be a single weapon fighter.
There's a sort of a problem with the auto-granted 2-weapon fighting. So if you get the 2-weapon fighting as a Ranger already, there are some situations where you can take single weapon fighting and have the auto-granted Ranger ones, so it gives you both the speed buffs, but that's probably going to get fixed sooner than later.
Well, anyways, you can go find out 3-Barrel Cove on Epic. I got a chance to run that on Epic Elite earlier this week and had a lot of fun doing it. They're quite a bit faster than I'm used to for Epic Elite. It's still longer to do it. It took us a couple hours to do the whole chain, but that was mostly because we kept trying to do the puzzle. And what is it? I can't remember which one. There's a big giant puzzle, and if you do it wrong, you kill the dude and you have to start over. So we did that a few times before we gave up on doing the puzzle.
Oh, I never do that one.
Well, the funny part was we were doing the puzzle, and we had a rogue that was finding all the traps for us, and then he went AFK. And then there were a couple of glyphs that he didn't check. And so we waited for like 10 minutes for him to come back, and then like, all right, I'm done waiting, and then I flipped it, and it was the wrong one, and then he came back right then, so kind of the way it goes.
Ouch.
Yeah, those quests are mean on Epic Elite. I think they're a little high in the difficulty range for level 20. Trap was hitting people for 1400 and 1600 and prove your worth.
Traps are brutal.
Yeah, traps are pretty nasty. Other than traps, my group didn't have too much problems until we got to the airship combat. But other than that, we did pretty good. Um, let's see, just some other notes. I wanted to mention that you can buy 2% guild renown potions with 150 heroic ingredients from House C challenges. So if you're looking ways to build up your guild XP a little faster, that's an option.
Oh,
There's
nice.
Yeah, so something that a lot of people don't necessarily know about. You actually also get XP pots from there. They're all 2% pots, but you can get an XP pot as well.
I'd forgotten about those. Those have been in the game for since Kenneth came out, right?
Yeah, and if you can run those if you're doing heroic stuff and get a fair bit of XP the first time you run them, especially if you can get a couple of stars on some of the shorter ones. So that's a pretty good option. And then if you don't have anything to do with the ingredients just sit in your bag, that's an option to spend them. There also, I just wanted to mention, there is no longer an upgrade system with there's no longer an upgrade system with the airships. So when you buy, or for the Astral Shard airship, so you can just buy whichever Astral Shard airship you want. You don't have to do any upgrading thing with that. They also announced late this week after they launched Update 22 that they're going to reduce the prices of the airship, the Astral Shard airships, by a fair number. So if you've already purchased the old airships, if you've already purchased an airship under the old and current shard price, they're going to do a patch early this week, or sometime this week, hopefully, to fix a few things that we'll talk about later. And they're going to adjust the actual shard prices on that. So if you have bought it, what you're going to have to do is connect with a GM via the in-game help menu, and they should be able to give your guild back the difference in shards. There's also, they did actually say that they're hoping to do the patch on Wednesday in that as well. So that's kind of a note there. Other than that, let's just go around the table real quick. Give us your thoughts on Update 22. Let's start with Voodu.
I like it. It's a lot of fun. I had fun shooting down the airships in the Slayer Zone. I was kind of hoping for a rapid fire machine gun style turret option, kind of like in Haunted Halls, because I want to feel more like I'm, manning a machine gun than this thing that takes 30 seconds to pull the drawstring. And
They do
yeah, I've
a fair
done.
bit of damage, though.
They do, yeah. But I don't know. I just think it'd be funner to rapid fire. That's just me. And I did them all on Epic Elite. I tried to solo the last one, Precious Cargo, and I was actually doing pretty well until I got hit by an opposing ship's cannon, which did like 2,000 damage to me, and I was like, I'll bring a group in here instead. And like we said, the traps are just brutal. And I saw that they replaced that big ladder shaft in Prove Your Worth with some elevators, but those elevators are a little quirky, which kind of complicated things more than I think the ladders do. So that was a little frustrating.
What about you, Chris?
All around, I give it an A. Maybe not an A plus because there's still some issues to be worked out, but it's really fun. It's added some more life to Three Barrel Cove. It's a reason for me to come out here again. Three Barrel Cove is one of those that has been around since, early days. So one of my coolest original drops was a +1 flaming monstrous humanoid bane warhammer that I could bring into Scoundrel's Run to get level 5. So a lot of the memories from this are very old and stale, and this will sort of help out with that. That being said, man, those Epic Elites are tough. The saves are nuts. Like, if you're not doing Paladin Splash Monk, then you're not going to make a save, most likely. It's really fun, though. That's a good idea on the ballistas. I had totally forgotten that they had those rapid-fire ones in Haunted Halls, but that would have been one ballista is the heavy one, and one ballista would be the rapid-fire. That'd be pretty cool. But the loot's pretty good, too, for level 24s. it sort of fills the gap nicely, and it's more XP at that level, so maybe I can stay out of the King's Forest area for a little while.
It seems like I think with the loot and the XP, I think a lot of people will be running it, and the quests are really good as well. I was a little disappointed they didn't epify some of the other quests, particularly like Scoundrel's Run would have been a fun one. Having said that, though, those are the ones that they did are very enjoyable. Let's say like the airship combat's pretty cool. Although in the last quest, when you're actually on the airship, the main airship weapons are kind of we were doing on Epic Elite, which might have been part of the problem, but I kind of found them to be unrealistic to use, mostly because the attacking airships are pretty much one shot, particularly the ballistas. It would take a minute just to get them back up, and they come up with like no health, so they're really easy to destroy at that point. So that was kind of something that I noticed. We pretty much just stopped even trying to fight the airship, and mostly just hid from the blasts until our airship got stopped, and then dealt with it then. So that was kind of a little bit of a bummer, but other than that, it was a lot of fun. Firing the ballistas is fun. It's a little tricky. I found that if you line up your sight line with the ballista, and then start firing it, and then use mouse look mode to look up, that gives a pretty good firing aiming mechanism. As far as the guild system goes, like the ship, like the buffs that are there. Probably the only real complaint I had was that I liked having the tavern and the bank on the deck of the first deck, the top deck of my airship.
That needs to happen. I totally agree.
Yeah, that's the consensus, I think.
Yeah, that was kind of a bummer. We kind of made a little bit of a compromise. We just stuck our first deck, the first whole deck, pretty much with anything that's related to buying or interacting in that kind of way. So that we put the bank, the whole Orion system there, and all the different vendors and hireling vendors and all that on that level. So it's not too bad, but it was a lot more convenient to have some of that stuff on the top. But I'm not. It's not terrible. It's just a little annoying. I'll probably get used to it. The one thing I was kind of wondering was what guilds would be able to do with the extra shards and plat that's donated after you buy all this stuff. It kind of seems like they need to have some expendable guild amenities. Like hopefully, maybe they'll add them later. But just some stuff that you can kind of add to that's a time thing, just as a little bit of a sink for some of that stuff, so you actually have something to spend that stuff on.
Doesn't the largest ship have spots that can't be filled? I assume that is the intent, to have different ship buffs added at a later time.
Yeah, that would not surprise me at all. But I was just kind of thinking along the lines of what happens if a guild gets a little overzealous with their shard donations.
Yeah.
So, probably
we're actually having that problem now, and they need to add an option so that officers and guild leader can withdraw shards and plat, because once you have all the buffs and you have the big ship, it just rots in there. There's nothing to do with it.
Or actually, I can say two things. I don't know if I can understand why you don't want certain people to be able to withdraw. I can see that, but it would be good to have an option for like the guild leader to turn off donations, so that people can't put more stuff in. And I think
that's a good idea.
And I think there's a couple things you could do that would be like guild amenities that would expire. And the kind of things like a guild XP buff would be good. Just a normal XP, an extra XP buff, and maybe another loot bonus. Although I realized after I wrote that there is actually a buff that gives you +1 to loot as a guild buff. But just some thoughts. Yeah, that was pretty slick. I like that one. On the topic of named loot drops, Steelstar mentioned that content that has tiered loot, as in normal, hard, and elite flavors, generally has a static drop rate across all difficulties. Content that has the same items in every difficulty setting, such as most of the old epics, and Three Billow Cove, generally has a higher drop rate on higher difficulties. And when I was running on Epic Elite, we were getting at least one named item a quest, if not more. They generally weren't coming in my name, and they generally weren't the ones that I wanted. But I did get a mitts, so that was nice. The other ones were kind of... I got 2 tillers. But they also mentioned that the scroll seals and shards of the old Epic item system usually have higher drop rates and higher difficulties, but the exact rate can vary between packs. Just a note, can we up the drop rate in the sands, please? Thanks. All right, now the fun stuff, and we'll try and cruise through some of this. And I'm going to paraphrase a lot of this. There's a couple of changes that they're pondering and looking at, combining player feedback and some ideas that they have. None of this stuff is for sure going to happen in this way, but the things they're looking at and addressing, and this is kind of where they're at right now and looking for player feedback on some of the stuff. So we'll link to these in the show notes so you can go read the whole post, but otherwise we're going to kind of summarize a lot of this stuff. First off, armor changes. So what they're trying to do is basically mitigate, or they want the heavily armored characters to, or they feel that heavily armored characters are falling behind light armor characters, particularly ones that use evasion. And part of the problem is that armor doesn't really offer more than armor class in terms of robes and light armor. So they don't want to hurt evasion builds, but they want to improve heavy armor builds. So the first thing they're going to do is change the formula for physical resistance rating. It was a fairly complicated formula before. Now the formula is going to be 150 divided by the total of 150 plus your PRR. I checked the numbers, and I think at like 250 PRR, this turns out to be like 3% better than the old formula. So that's pretty reasonable. It's a little better for everyone, but not too much of a difference. But it does simplify things a little bit. They're also going to add a magical resistance rating, which will basically do the same thing for magical damage that PRR does for physical damage. They're currently their intention is that existing magical items that affect PRR will also affect what they're calling MMR, so magical resistance rating. But they're not necessarily going to stick to that in the future, so some things may buff one or the other. And then with that, armor will have some limits on some of that. So that's the... Let's see if I can find some. I'm just kind of looking through all the information that they posted here. They are looking at caps on MMR, and they were looking at a cap for both physical resistance and magical resistance for robes and light armor. But now they're kind of exploring the idea of only capping the magical resistance rating for characters wearing robes and light armor. The reason why they're doing that is because evasion is already giving you a large defense against magical damage, and they want there to be a benefit to having heavy armor compared to having evasion, or at least a different kind of formula on how you can reduce that damage. So that's what they're looking at for that. We'll stop here. What do you guys think about that?
Well, it seems to be.
Change.
Yeah, I mean, clearly they're recalibrating the way armor class works and PRR works. And, I don't even have any evasion builds, but I do have some heavy armor builds, so I welcome that change. And the magical resistance rating is going to be huge for heavy armor build. I mean, it'll be incredible. If you're tanking some epic elite raid bosses and you're getting blasted by these, fire on thunder peak dragon breath, that's going to be a big game changer for the effectiveness of a heavy armor tank, for example, in that raid.
Yeah, absorbs have become more viable. You're still not going to take a Fury Double Dragon Fireball, but yeah, definitely absorbs. MRR is a great idea because now I don't have to worry about getting evasion on every single tune that I have. Right now I'm running, I splash Monk here, I splash Rogue there, try to do whatever you can to get your saves up, and you feel like you've lost half the flavor of your build. So it'll be nice to be able to take my pure cleric out somewhere with heavy armor on and not die every second.
Yeah, there's a lot of clamor about this, like departing a lot more from pen and paper. Look, that chip sailed a long time ago. So I'm not sure if that argument still
Right.
holds very well. We've long been past that. But the other thing is, you know, as the game develops and as we get higher and higher and higher, you have to keep in mind that this is a real-time game. So, and just to kind of make things work, there's a little bit of inflation in damage when you're comparing it to pen and paper. So you have to consider that things like evasion have become a lot more powerful than they were ever intended to be in pen and paper, because instead of in pen and paper, you're taking maybe a fireball every hour, because just how the pacing of the game works. Where in DDO, you're talking about the double dragon raid. There's 2 dragons shooting fireballs around, plus some magma elementals, plus salamanders. You run into problems with fire really fast. So you have to do a lot more evading. People without that evasion don't have a viable alternative in their defense, and you start running into problems with equality and parity. All right, so with armor, enchanted armor will get magical resistance rating. As long as your armor is magical, which is pretty much every armor in the game, you're going to get magical resistance rating. Shields will also provide some of that. They're also changing the PRR value of armor. So it used to be based on your base attack bonus. Appears that they're taking that part away. Although I kind of like that it made sense that some characters were better at using their armor, but I'm not going to complain. Pretty much everyone got better. So robes and outfits get no PRR or MMR. Light armor gets 15. Medium armor gets 30, and heavy armor gets 45. You only get the magical resistance if it's magical, but I don't foresee that being a problem for most folks. Except, level 1 characters that are using lower level stuff. That's where you're going to get it. Shields, bucklers are not going to provide any additional PRR or MMR. Light shields will give 5, heavy 10, and tower shields will give 15. So if you're a heavy armor character wearing a tower shield, you will just kind of as a baseline get 60 PRR, which is better than where we're at right now. So that's pretty awesome. In addition, characters who are proficient with shields can also use the larger shields for defense against attacks that would normally require a reflex saving throw. So instead of, or possibly in addition to using a reflex save, you can possibly deflect the damage off your shield. That rating will be that's what's represented by those numbers there, I believe.
Is that coming off the feat, or are they talking about adding that as like a base stat without the feats?
I think that's something different. Basically, what's going to happen is you're going to get a multiplier for your resistance ratings against magical attacks that normally allow a reflex saving throw. So if you're using a buckler or a light shield, this doesn't matter. It's the same as it always has been. If you're using a heavy shield or a tower shield, they're going to double your rating against attacks with a reflex saving throw, if I'm reading that correctly. So that's pretty significant. So that should be a lot of fun. And I think that's kind of where that is. Let's see. We already talked about the caps for MMR. Their current system has it capping PRR as well, but they're re-looking at that to see if they can make that different. The one kind of big change is that heavy shields will no longer allow evasion, which I think are actually. I'm trying to think if they actually say heavy shield or if they just say large shield in the game. But I can't remember. I was going to look it up and I forgot.
I didn't know shields allowed evasion anyways, as it is.
I assumed they didn't.
Tower shields do not. Or at least they're not supposed to. However, I believe heavy shields always have. Now, let's go back to that pen and paper argument. Heavy shields don't allow evasion in pen and paper, so that's actually becoming more in line with pen and paper. Having said that, there's a lot of characters that use heavy shields and evasion, and this is probably going to be the most contentious part of the whole thing, because those builds that were using heavy shields will no longer get evasion, and there's not really a lot of light shields in the game.
Well, I mean, another argument against pen and paper is, if anyone asks me, like, that doesn't seem right, I used to play pen and paper. I forgot to mention earlier, I had DM'd an Eberron campaign for a little while before playing DDO. DDO actually made a lot of my players angry because I left the game to play DDO. But the pen and paper argument is paper thin because how long did it take to develop 3.5 for the actual people who wrote the pen and paper game? They didn't really have as much time to balance and develop, and the people that have been working on DDO, the staff may have changed, but it's been around for 7 years. I mean, we know a lot of stuff that the people that wrote the original game might not. Like maybe they shouldn't have this ability, it's overpowered, or maybe we need to bump this power up.
Yeah, whenever someone starts talking about the pen and paper arguments, look, this is a different game. You always have to keep in the back of your mind that DDO happens at a much, much, much faster pace than pen and paper. Because in pen and paper, 6 seconds of game time is, at least when I was playing, probably about an hour. Usually it takes about an hour to do one turn. So we're playing in real time. 6 seconds takes an hour. So things that have on a hit effects, they happen much more rapidly in DDO. That's why there's a lot of those changes. They were also talking about raising the dodge caps for armor and shields. They kind of nixed all of that because people got confused and thought they were getting nerfed. So I hope they reversed that decision because that was a little lousy. What they were looking at doing basically was currently your dodge is based on your maximum dexterity bonus. What they were going to do was pretty much raise all of those and make them across the board for different armors. Robes would still have 25%, which is the same. Light armor would be at 20%, medium at 10%, but no evasion. And heavy armor would be 5% and no evasion. If you think about that, full plate has a max dex bonus of 1 as a baseline. So you were actually getting 4% more dodge out of heavy armor for full plate. But because this was apparently too confusing for folks, and everyone was up in an outcry that they were hard capping armor at 5%, even though they explicitly said you could increase the cap values just as you can currently, they nixed it because people were really upset about that and really didn't like it for I'm not sure why. Mostly probably because they couldn't. I thought that someone posted like right after the dev said they were going to rethinking that and just keep it as is on live. Something along the lines of thanks because people can't read, we lost a buff, which was pretty much a fairly accurate description of what happened.
No.
So they're not increasing the dodge, at least not right now, but that might change later. Okay, on the topic of some of the stances and just kind of the thought that DPS is terrible in using a shield, the Stalwart Defender and Sacred Defender will no longer be shield-based trees. They are going to change the enhancements. They will become a multi-selector enhancement. So the ones that required you to use a shield will now also optionally allow you to have medium or heavy armor to qualify for that stuff. They're also going to introduce 2 new trees for shield use. A Vanguard tree will focus on DPS while using weapon to shield, and the Shield Bearer tree will be a mitigation tree that will focus on heavy armor and shield. Those will both be available to Fighter and Paladin, and perhaps even a new class that supported heavy armor and martial abilities. Little teaser there. Other things that they're planning on looking at, the hit values of creatures in Epic Elite would be rebalanced, so high armor class builds will have some mitigation. In terms of, so they're talking a little bit about damage spikes. The theory here is basically evasion builds will have to deal with more damage from damage spikes, but will be taking damage less often. Heavier armor builds will take more overall damage, but will have a more predictable damage curve. So that's kind of what they're looking at for heavy armor builds, which I think is a great design theory if that's what you're going for. I think that'll work really well. So that just kind of gives an idea of where they're coming at from that. And I think that's pretty much all I think we want to say on this subject. They are looking at Mithril and other armor materials and how they interact with the systems. but they're not sure if they're going to do anything with that. They're not sure. They don't want to make an armor worse by changing its PRR and MMR values. And there were some concerns that I think we've mostly covered, or that are already kind of addressing. So it's not really in the works. Really, the big thing I think that it's still out there right now is heavy shields will prevent evasion from working, which is a change. There was a response to this that we are definitely need to address the lack of good small shields in future content. I know we have a plan to add small shields and bucklers in the loot for the epic version of Orchard.
Woohoo!
Oops.
That is gonna be nice.
Yeah, a little cat out of the bag in there. All right.
Was that the official confirmation, or did they have to come back in and say we're confirming this?
That was not the official confirmation. That was a slip of the tongue, but they are not denying it.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I know there's another post where Cordovan basically said, "We'll have more information about this later. Right now, we're working on update 22. Thanks."
Yeah.
So it looks like that's what's coming next.
So this will be the third endgame that's heavily undead based. My cleric smiles. It's a charisma spec cleric, so turning
I'm hoping they do a new raid for Abbott instead of amplifying Abbott, but that's another story. All right, let's move on to Paladin changes. They're looking at changing some Paladin stuff because they feel that there is no compelling reason to level Paladin past the early levels. They hope changes to armor and shield will help with that, but they're also looking for feedback on additional changes that they're looking at. Basically, they're looking at adding an armor of light ability that you get temporary hit points every time you use Smite, Evil, Lay on Hands, Cure Disease, or Turn Undead. And most people kind of looked at that like, most Paladins don't really have problems staying alive, so thanks for the extra hit points, but not compelling. The other thing they're looking at is Weapons of Light. So you get extra damage, extra light damage on a weapon and toggle. So you turn it on and your weapons do extra light damage. It's 1d6. It starts at 1d6 for weapon attacks, but it goes to 2d6 if the weapon is two-handed or a shield bash attack, which is kind of neat. And then there's also going to be a burst effect with a radius of doing that damage as an AoE. That's kind of the part that I didn't really like because I don't always like to have AoE damage going off that's hard to control.
Very agreed.
If they did it as two separate toggles, I would be fine with that.
We just unleashed half the server's worth of bards on, and now all these fascinates are going to get broken.
Yeah, well, that was always a problem, but I'm always kind of leery of stuff that does that. That's hard to control. But hey, extra damage. I'm not going to complain. The controversial part was that they are considering changing Divine Grace to limiting it to 2 + 3 times your Paladin level. For the total charisma bonus, it will add to saving throws, which means all those folks that are splashing 2 levels of Paladin, you would only be able to go up to an 8 charisma bonus to your saving throws. Having said that, that's definitely a controversial thing. Having said that, I find that a lot of characters, other than the Sork builds, they're kind of splashing that Paladin level. I don't know if they're really going to have more than 8 charisma bonus anyways. But I can definitely see, it's a change that's going to affect some people. So
there's gonna be a lot of unhappy Sorks out there.
Yeah, I think that's the build that's going to get hit the most is the Sork build because they're going to have a higher charisma. That would make that a lot more viable. So that's kind of what it is. Let's see.
Some of those Sork builds take 6 Paladin just for the stance, though.
Yeah, I mean, the more levels you take, let's see. If a Sork has plus 40, what is that? Plus, I'm gonna do the math now. Be plus 15 modifier at 40 charisma.
Mm-hmm.
So you only need 4 levels of Paladin, right? 4 levels of Paladin will get you 14. So you don't have to take a lot of paladin to kind of get up there, but yeah, you'd lose some. You'd lose some. I'm not sure I agree with that change. I kind of understand where they're coming from, but I don't. It doesn't make any sense to me when paladins are going to have that put on their class to inhibit that ability when there's no similar thing with evasion. Like if you can do that with paladin, why isn't there something where rogues can only use like evasion to avoid this percentage of damage or something like that? So I don't. I think the evasion two levels to splash evasion is a lot more powerful than 2 levels to get a charisma bonus. I mean that's a sacrifice. It's basically all you're getting. So I hope they kind of do away with that.
The problem I think might be that they can both be used in tandem. So you're using the paladin to get the saves to make the reflex and evade out of stuff. But yeah, it's a good point that they don't actually share those, and they're trying to incentivize playing a paladin up to 20, but it seems like all the clamoring is for more damage because a paladin can't really do what most other classes can do, and that is solo stuff. If they can, it takes a really long time and gets boring.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't. I think it's a double standard if you're going to limit that ability, Divine Grace, in that capacity. What's your reasoning for not limiting evasion, other than the fact that there would be a mass exodus? Like that would be. I'm not advocating for.
Yeah, don't give anyone any ideas.
That's a bad plan. Don't do that. But if you so, I just think it's double standard with Divine Grace. I think it's a bad choice. That's what you get for taking 2 levels of Paladin. It's the value of the class. So I don't think it's a problem that people only take 2 levels of Paladin for that. It's a sacrifice for something else you might be doing. So, anyways, moving on, because we still got a lot of stuff to talk about, and we're already getting along. This is going to be a long show, I can tell. Earning epic and iconic Hearts of Wood. They've been looking at ways to improve the experience of earning Hearts of Wood. After several rounds of iteration with the Players' Council, this is the direction they're moving towards. This would come sometime after Update 22, so there's no release date on this, but it's probably farther along than other ones. When your character is at level cap, completing epic quests will add 2 heart seeds to the end reward list for that quest. This only applies to quests where combinations of valor are already showing up, including epic quests on normal, hard, or elite that are not ransacked. So the way it works is if you're at level cap, if combinations of valor show up in your end reward list, 2 heart seeds will also show up in your end reward list. The thing they like about this is basically it doesn't change anything about the combinations of valor, which they want to use for other things other than reincarnating, particularly with Thunderhome crafting currently. It's a very simple thing, and it doesn't inhibit what's going on already. It also provides more of an incentive to maybe choose something other than combinations of valor while you're questing. They like that as well. Let's go around the table and give some thoughts on that. We'll start with Chris.
I'll stay concise and say this is pure positive. Anyone who would complain about this needs to find something better to do with their time. Free stuff is always good. And it also mimics the old token system where you sit at 20 and just go get tokens of the 12 for your hearts. Only this time it's heart seeds and epic hearts.
Yep. Voodu?
More ways to get, commendations or heart seeds is a good thing, so I love it.
Yeah, I would say that it's not a perfect system, but it's a good step. I think is kind of what a lot of people were saying. There are definitely some concerns that people will, okay, I'm at 20, let's go run impossible demands a lot every day. Like they'll start looking for the shorter quests where you're going to get the 2 heart seeds. I think I'm not sure how feasible it would be. A better solution would be to have that number be a little bit sliding in terms of difficulty level and level of the quest. Having said that, you're talking about 2 heart seeds, so you don't want that number to get really high. You don't want the number. 1 would be fine. If it slides all the way up to 10, that's just ridiculous. 2 is a good compromise, I think, for that. So.
What about 1, 2, 3 on normal, hard, and elite?
I saw that suggested. Think I think if you wanted to like really make it a really solid system, it's a little more complicated than that. Just because you still have, I think you should. It still needs to account for level range, but now you're talking about probably having to go in and for each quest figure out what number of seeds it should be dropping at for each difficulty, and I think that's ridiculous. It's a waste of time. So just saying 2 for everything, I'm fine with that. It's free. It's better. It's better than the system we have. So that's where I'm gonna land. Better than what we have. Not complaining. All right. Some bugs. There are some technical issues with new guild storage amenities. They will not be launching with Update 22, so those will be coming later. All old amenities remain available for purchase with Update 22 and can be used in the cargo hold. So you can still do that. Eventually, the new amenities will show up in end reward lists, and they will phase out buying the old system of stuff. So just be aware of that. Although I would say I would kind of like to see them maybe keep like the banker and the tavern and the mailbox and like that kind of stuff. Maybe not the Buffy ones, but some of those other ones, just to kind of let those kind of live, so you can just go to the cargo hold quick for that kind of stuff. But the guild amenities seem to mirror that functionality as well, so it's probably not necessary. Although they could put those hook points back on the deck of the ship, so you can use the old style ones on the top.
That would be preferred.
Yeah, I would go for that. Let's see. Airship tavern amenities are not currently working correctly, are not allowing for spell swaps, usage regeneration, and other tavern effects. That is the same is true of hot tubs and top decks. Oh, hey, top decks are supposed to provide tavern benefits. That's cool. The first mate does not allow players to deposit platinum or other coinage. It allows astral shards. You can still give plat by going to the airship room. You can do that there. This is kind of the big one of the update. Many crafting systems are not functioning properly. That includes Canith, that includes Epic, I think it includes Green Steel. So that's a high priority fix. I did see them use that verbiage, and it sounds like we're going to have an update Wednesday to fix that. That also relates to the bag deposit box has been turned off, which they're hoping to get back with that same update as well. Players will see invalid advancement data error when taking a single weapon fighting feat outside of initial character creation if that player takes the necessary ranks and balance during the level in which they attempt to take the feat. Short version, currently if you are trying to take a single weapon fighting feat, consider the balance requirement that they give there to be 1 higher than it actually is, and you will be fine. See, attempting to use a key of the city to Evening Star on the veteran status airship Heart of Wind will prevent the characters from being able to return to the Heart of Wind. Don't do that.
Interesting.
Don't do that. Hopefully they'll fix that later, but you might not be able to get your ship. The Lord of Blades, the elemental teleporters will only teleport 1 character. This will be fixed in the next game update. Yeah,
wow, that's a real challenge test.
The good news is you can try it as many times as you want. So, and people aren't running that too horribly much. Three Barrel Cove. Yeah, 3 Barrel Cove is not supposed to give dwarven ingots for the chain reward. It would give you 1, which was really amusing. And I actually did take it too. That was the funny part.
Must have been some real trash on the rest of your list.
I got 2 named items, but one was the dart, and I don't have any thrower builds, and usually I just use a thrower to pull stuff, or because I reluctantly have no other option. And that the dart is kind of more of a crowd controlling one. It's a great dart. It has some really nice options on it, particularly for crowd control, but it didn't really work for the character I was on. So
I got the rune arm out of that end list.
I got something else. I think I got another Taylor out of the end list, or no, I got the other shield. And I don't the buckler one, which it's a nice shield. I just don't have anyone that would use it, so I took the hint. Let's see. You can get stuck entering 3 Barrel Cove, either from the quest or from the town. If it happens to you, you can slash. I've heard you can slash stuck to get out of to be able to move. But I have seen that as a problem. It hasn't happened to me, but I heard about it.
I've had it happen plenty, and one fix is the slash stuck will only work once per hour, and if you are running in a group that does that a lot, then you're going to eventually run into it again. The best way to prevent it is to know what causes it, which is old instances. It seems like once people start killing in the instance, then some people joining later might get stuck. Whatever we did to fix it was to everyone recall, reset the instance, and start a new fresh instance, and then everyone wouldn't be stuck at the entrance. But once people have spent some time in there, if you leave the instance and come back in, you'll most likely be stuck.
Good to know. Libraries of the Silver Magic are still not, if they were stored in a character bank, shared bank, or TR cache, they may not update correctly. You have to get in touch with in-game customer service for assistance on that, and they can upgrade that. 10k starts is not available as a monk bonus feat. You can still take it as a normal feat, though. Related with the with kind of the crafting stuff that's going on, the Necro 4 sigils and shield pieces cannot be put into their respective containers, which is kind of a problem if you want to flag for Litany. And coup de grace, basically if you use coup de grace when it's supposed to work for fascinates and sleep, what happens is the damage from your attack takes effect, breaks those effects before the coup de grace gets applied. Might get fixed later. Mostly, other than the crafting and the bag deposit box, which we didn't have before, but a lot of people were like, "Oh, sweet!" and dumped a bunch of stuff in there, and now they can't get it out. Other than those two things, patch went pretty well. Although most of the stuff that you get stuck in the bag deposit box, you probably couldn't use anyways because crafting's broken.
Good point.
At least they put those two together. Bonus days, 25% heroic XP through today, the day of the recording.
Oh, wouldn't it be great if they did a plus crafting XP bonus weekend?
That would have been pretty funny. They're a little better than that.
Yeah.
Or a little luckier, one of the two. Let's see, store news. They updated the price for 3 Rail Cove. It's about 20% more expensive than it used to be. They have added Supreme and Sovereign Guild Renown elixirs. You can still buy, they have bag deposit box upgrades. You can still buy them. They will still take effect when they re-enable it. For a limited time, you can get +6 stat tomes. I didn't see an end date on that, but you can currently get +6 stat tomes from the store. The sales for the week, you can get 20% off of Heroic and Lesser Hearts of Wood, 20% off of XP, elixirs, healing potions, and spell point potions. And the freebie is a Lasting Supreme Potion ×5. The code is GROG12. You can get one per account there. All right, community news. We're going to try and speed this along. Malfista has looked at airship amenities in a blog. You can check that out. Tom Jones Jr. put together a spreadsheet to help track airship amenity plans. Didn't look at it, but it sounds pretty helpful. The High Rollers were on Cannith doing some raids on Saturday. High Lords of Malkir. From Voodu here, we're doing Abbott. I'm assuming you were victorious.
Yes, it was great. We'll be doing Fires on Thunder Peak and Temple of Deathworm this coming Saturday.
Awesome. Let's see, from the Guild Hall, Masters of Faerun are level 42 guild on Cannith, looking for new and active players of all skill levels. The comment for the week: how would you defend your village from an airship attack? I would train a dragon. How about Voodu? What would you do to defend your village from an airship attack?
It's easy. See, I have this friend named Anna. I saved her life once, and she can pretty much just wish them away.
That's fair. How about you, Lich?
I'd build my village underground.
Nice.
That's a good option.
Dwarves had good ideas.
Indeed. Let's see. DDO Gamer wrote about airship combat in a new blog post. You can check that out. Let's see. Cocktail Hour was out with a 73rd episode. Let's see. I didn't do this beforehand, and I should have. But let's find a pug story to share. Let's see. Someone wrote that they were running Devil's Assault, and someone placed a D-door somewhat accidentally, resulting in the cleric clicking on it going back to the start. If you don't know the quest, you're locked out from the main room. They thought they were hosed, but by good communication and the cleric moving up to the door, and I'm assuming some cocoon action, they were basically able to get some mobs to teleport to the door and fight them on both sides, and do some healing, so they managed to still managed to complete the quest, which is no small feat.
Outstanding.
So, Good job, guys. That's a pretty handy one there. And I will be drawing sometime today for the starter code, the starter pack for the winner of that. Thanks for everyone who sent in some Pug stories there. I just want to remind everyone that there will be a Gen Con meetup. We'll link to that in the show notes. Gen Con is August 14th to 17th, I believe, and PAX Prime is Labor Day weekend. Labor Day is the 1st of September. So there will probably be something happening there, but no official word on what Turbine will or will not be doing at PAX for that. Okay, that's the news. Let's talk about the roundtable this week. We have been, over the last couple of weeks, doing a series on PUGs. We're going to finish that off today. It's a 3-part series. We talked previously about finding a pug and etiquette. Today we're going to talk about being a leader of a pug. And I'm just going to start off by saying a lot of times people will complain about the number of people that are on the servers and whether or not the servers are really slow. I'm just going to point out that you can lead a pug, and a lot of times it's not so much a lack of players, so that is a problem. It's more of a lack of leaders and people stepping up to lead a pug. So we're going to give you
I agree. I totally agree.
We'll give you some tips on how to be a more effective leader. We're just going to start by opening this discussion. What does it mean to be a leader of a party?
Opening that LFM, getting a group together, and not making anyone angry. That's about it. It's not that hard. Don't be scared of it.
A nice, succinct answer to that. I think you definitely have to play a little bit of, you might have to moderate between some players. It means you have to make some choices for how your group is going to do some stuff. Some groups require making more choices than others. You also have to, I think probably the biggest thing is going to be who you let in your group as a leader. Some people, and for some quests, that might not be a big thing. We'll talk about raids a little bit more specifically later. When we talk about leading a raid, you're going to have to fill a bunch of different roles for that raid, and that's true for certain quests as well. You might need certain things for certain quests to have more chance of success. Or do you want to add anything to what does it mean to be a leader, Mr. Voodu?
Well, if you're running a quest, we said we'll talk about raids in a few. If you're running a quest, I think you should have at least a general idea of how the quest works. And if you don't, make sure you let that indicate that in the LFM, and make sure you're communicating effectively to your group. Let them know, what method you're going to use, if you're going to be doing an optional, if you want people to stick together, if you do or don't want people to zerg, and so on. Because if you have, if everybody's in your quest and they're all doing different methods and running off in different directions, it can just lead to failure.
Yeah, and this will sound a little bit like a contradiction to what we'll talk about later, but don't let not knowing the quest stop you from putting up an LFM. It may be harder to find people because they might not want to join you if you don't know what you're doing, but don't let it stop you. There are plenty of people in the game, particularly when you're running at lower level quests. There are plenty of people that are in the same boat that you are and are just looking for someone to run a quest that they don't know so they can learn it a little bit. You can find people that way. And also there are vets out there that will still join, maybe they're in a mood to help some folks out and they'll see that you need some help and they'll come and help you and they teach you the quest. So don't let that stop you.
I totally agree.
And I'm not going to contradict myself later when I say that why that will not make your LFM more attractive. Let's talk about that right now. What are some ways to make your LFM more attractive to people looking for groups?
Well, sometimes people will put, like free beer and smokes or something. So that's always a good time, but
I would say probably the most effective one is be almost full, because people want to run with a group who is about to go into the quest. But yeah, you can't always pull that off when you're just popping up a LFM immediately. I was going to add, you want to say if you're learning a quest line, put that in the LFM so that other people know it. You may not get the uber epic elitists, but you'll get some fun people to play with who aren't going to try and drag you through too quickly, so you actually get to enjoy the content. So just put, I am learning this quest, or let's learn this quest, and that's how you'll, get it done.
Definitely indicate what the expectations are. If you don't want people to zerg, indicate that much. If you are still learning, like you said, indicate that much. If you want some help, say that. And that way you're not going to get the people you don't want, and you're going to get the, hopefully you'll get the people that you do want.
Keywords are kind of important. The description in general is an important thing to be using, because it can make it really clear what your expectations are and what you're looking for, which, depending on what you're looking for, whatever you put in there, you're gonna take out some portion of the population that's not going to qualify for that. And they're not going to apply because they don't feel like they qualify for that. We talked a little bit about keywords before, but just kind of some of the stuff that we mentioned before. Bring your own heal, BYOH. TR vets is a really common one. I hate it personally because I think it has almost no meaning, but a lot of people use it. Usually they're trying to say like, experienced players. Although I'd rather just say something about experience. Elite streaking, know the way to the quest. Those are some pretty common keywords. I don't know, there's some keywords that kind of stick out for you guys.
SRE, Slayer, Rares, Explorers. That's probably going to come up a lot with Three Barrel Cove. Those are probably the easiest groups to lead because you don't really have to lead. You just sort of get together and hack and slash, which is fun.
IP for in progress. Some people don't like joining groups that are in progress. So, if you've already started, make sure you indicate that. I've had people drop my groups because they wanted to, all wait and start together, and that's fine. Indicate as much. And if you're not aware, you may not be aware that you can actually mouse over the LFM, and you can tell where everybody is. Just look at their location, and you can see, are they all in the quest already, or where they're all at.
Good. So I'll say we're talking about more on this topic. One thing you do to really make your LFM more attractive is put the quest, like there's an option to select the quest. It's kind of a cumbersome UI, but select the quest as much as possible. Select the quest, because what happens is it does a couple things for you. One, if you enter the quest, it will actually tell everyone this adventure has been active for this number of minutes, which can be really helpful in that situation of how far along are you. The other thing is a lot of the content, particularly if you're in level ranges where there's a lot of free-to-play content and there's a lot of not free-to-play content, players, particularly new players, they don't own content, might not know what they own, what they don't own. When you put the quest in the UI, it'll tell them that they need to buy it and whether or not they're eligible to run it. So that can just be a really good way to kind of solve that problem. Is you don't end up with people joining that didn't realize they don't own the content. See, the other thing I really want to mention is streak levels. A lot of players, particularly the more quote elitist players, really like to do bravery bonus streaks. So it's a good idea to have an understanding of what levels apply for bravery bonus. On heroic levels 1 to 19, you can take people up to 2 levels higher than the listed quest level. And that the listed quest level is both in the compendium list and I'm pretty sure it's in. I remember if in the LFM UI if it lists quest level. I don't think it does. But it's been so long since I've bothered to actually specifically look at that.
Yes, it does.
It does. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever level is listed in those two places, you can go 2 levels higher than that in heroic. That's levels 1 to 19. Quests that are level 20 base, you can go up to 3 levels higher. So a level 20 quest on normal, or epic normal, you can go up to level 23 and still be eligible for bravery streak. Quests that are level 21 and higher, you can go up to 4 levels higher. So a level 21 quest, you can take level 25 and everyone will still be eligible for bravery streak. If you take someone higher than that, people will not be eligible for bravery streak bonus. It doesn't break it, so it doesn't ruin their streak, but you don't get the bonus XP associated with a bravery streak. So that's something that's really important to know when you're building your LFM and putting it out there. That it just people are oftentimes aware. Some people aren't as aware of it. I see that particularly in epic levels where people will use the same level range that they would in heroic for epic, um, which limits how many people like the level ranges that they can take in for that. You can go lower, as low as you want, provided they can still enter the quest. That's not an issue. All right, anything you guys want to add on the streak levels? Yeah, pretty much got it covered. So
Yeah.
It's a big turnoff if they don't have the levels set correctly in their LFM, because especially if they indicate they're streaking, and it's a max level 10 and they've got 9 to 12 selected, for their level range. I'll look at that and think, okay, this guy doesn't know what he's doing, and I won't even bother.
It's not so much. It's not so much that I mind that he doesn't know what he's doing. It's just I don't want to run it because I want the streak bonus.
Big time.
And if he's got someone, if he's got someone in the group, then and as the leader too, don't you want to be aware of that too, because you don't want to let someone in that's gonna make people ineligible for the bravery streak. Because if you're halfway through a quest and then you get someone to join and they're above that level range and they join and suddenly no one's getting the bravery streak bonus, that's what an elite streak is up to 50% extra XP. That's a lot of XP that they're losing, and they're not gonna like you for that at all.
Yeah, some people get pretty bent about that.
And it's it's a fair thing to be a little upset about, because you set the expectation by saying this was the level range and then you let someone in. And sometimes it happens. Sometimes it's not your fault either. I've accepted people and they've gone and leveled right away, and which we kind of talked about last week in the etiquette, and leveled outside the level range I listed, and suddenly no one's getting bravery streak bonus, and I got really pissed at them. So I'll say rules of thumb with LFMs: be concise, be clear, and be upfront. You don't want to write a really long post in the comments, because people don't necessarily want to read a whole long thing just to figure out what's going on. Whatever pace you're moving at, you don't want people that aren't willing to or don't want to run at that pace to be running with you, because everyone's gonna be happier if that's not the case. So if you're gonna move fast in Zerg, you don't want people to slow you down. Mention that. You won't get people that'll slow you down. You'll be happier. They'll be happier. They won't feel like they're being rushed or pressured. If you're gonna smell the roses, let people know that. That way the Zergers don't come and make you unhappy, and they feel like they're doing all the work. Although they probably won't care. But you might care. I've mentioned this before. I like to put keep up, no babysitting in my LFMs. Partly, there's kind of a couple reasons why I do that. One is it sets my expectations, but it's also somewhat vague, and that's a little intentional, because it gives me leeway, right? I can boot someone for not keeping up, and I've set that expectation, but I can be lenient with it as well. As far as no babysitting, I'm setting the expectation that I'm not going to hold your hand through everything, but that's not to say that I won't help you along either. The other thing with that is I like using the same phrase because it's kind of an identifier. I run a fairly large stable of tunes, so having something that is consistent helps people identify that, oh, that's that guy. Hey, I ran with him before. I saw that LFM before. I'm going to go run with him because I liked running with him. Or I'm not going to run with him because he was a butthead. Probably happened a few times. So that having something it's concise, it's clear, and it's upfront is all really good. And having something that's kind of your regular style can be really, really good as well. I do something similar for raids. I'll usually have something that's like number we're on of number I'm planning on doing ish. It's kind of what I generally do. So lets people know how many times I'm looking to run it. I might run it more, I might run it less, but that's kind of my goal for the night. And it's also something that I use consistently, so people kind of catch on to that occasionally. And I know it works because I've seen the same names a lot of times. So, do you guys have anything you want to throw in here on making your LFM more attractive before we move on?
It's funny that you mentioned that you put no babysitting. When I see those things in LFMs, even when I know the quest well and know that, even if I could solo it, if I see people write, no babysitting, no hand holding, that kind of stuff, I never click those LFMs. No disrespect, Patrick. But to me, I see those, and to me that speaks of elitism. And I'm not saying you're an elitist, but I've heard other people say that when they see those things, they won't click that LFM, even if it's a quest they know really well.
Which is fair, and I'm not going to disregard that. And people have commented on the show too, like, "Oh, you're a jerk, you're an elitist." I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to disagree with that statement. I'm not a jerk. I'm fairly lenient with that. It's just kind of my default. I don't really even. I started using it, I think, because I thought it was kind of funny and catchy. And I don't know. It's kind of where my restrictions are. I like that it's a little vague in the sense that I don't like. I'm not saying you're not gonna have to do all your self healing. You're not gonna have help with stuff, but I don't want to babysit people.
Yeah, babysitting is a full-time job. Helping out is not. There's a difference.
Yes.
If we have to pick up your stone every 5 minutes, then that can take more time, and time's kind of valuable sometimes. I mean, if you're on to play for 30 minutes or an hour, you might want to get 2 quests in instead of 1, but yeah, there are some that'll do that, and that's the choice. That's what they want to run. So
Totally.
And I think the way that you said that there's a difference between helping and babysitting is a really good thing to keep in mind. And that's kind of where I stand on the subject as well. All right, let's talk about how to be a good leader. What are some tips you have for being a good leader? And we'll talk about raids specifically a little bit later, but just in general, being a good leader.
Rule number 1, lead. If you have the star, don't be afraid to speak up and tell people what to do, because I've been in plenty of parties where someone won't know what to do or where to be. We'll have someone off on a tangent out somewhere else, and if there's no point for them to be over there, and they're causing problems, it'd be good for a star to speak up and say, hey, mind joining the group? We need help over here, or we don't want you to pull all that trash. Join the group. The other 4 people will like you for it.
Those are both really good points. That when you have the star, the other people in your group are looking to you to say something if somebody's doing something they're not supposed to be, and that is your job. And like Chris said, the other people in your group will appreciate that you're telling this other person not to pull all the aggro, or wreck your dungeon alert, or screw up whatever method you're using to run the quest.
I think another thing I'll point out is don't be afraid to ask for help either. Right? Just because you have the star doesn't mean you have to know everything and you have to know how to do the quest. You get to a part that is tough. Feel free to say, "Hey, I'm not really sure how we should do this. Does anyone have any ideas?" That's totally fine.
Absolutely. I lead a lot of raids in my guild, and earlier on when I didn't know the raids as well as I did, I would tell people, I'm still learning this raid. If you guys see something I'm doing wrong, please speak up.
Yeah, and I can't think of any time where I've ever seen someone get yelled at for or intimidated or belittled because they didn't know something and they asked for help in DDO. I've never seen it. Not to say that hasn't happened, but in general, if you need some help leading, ask for help. There's no problem with that. We were talking about putting in your LFM, and hey, I could use some help here. That's totally fine. Granted, a large portion of the player base may not be what they want to do right then, and that's fine too. But
if you think about it, you're kind of presenting the opportunity for someone else to show you how much they know about the game, so they might take you up on that.
There is no shortage of people who want to show other people how much they know about the game. And sometimes they actually prove that they do know something about the game. I'll say some things that they consider too, which I talk about LFMs a lot. Know what you're asking with your LFM. That's kind of a key thing. We kind of hashed that out pretty good. I'll say it's not always the pug's fault. It's something to keep in mind. They may have done something wrong, but it may be because you didn't tell them, or you told them something wrong or whatever it is. So be open to the possibility that Pugs you're mad at, it may not just be his fault. One of my supervisors at work always kind of had this mantra that if there was a misunderstanding or an error because of miscommunication or something wasn't clear, it's the fault of the person explaining it, not the person doing it. So be aware of that. Be willing to say like, "Hey guys, sorry we failed, my fault." Like that's, again, it's one of those things that people. I tend to have a lot more respect for people who can say, "Hey, I need help. Hey, that was totally my bad. I was wrong." Those guys are people that I want to run with, whether or not, maybe if they're not if they're a terrible player, maybe not. But personality-wise, those are people I want to run with, not the people that they gave unclear instructions and then harped on another guy who was trying to do what he thought he was being told. That's not a person I want to run with.
That's an outstanding point. If you do happen to fail a quest or raid, just say, my bad. I'm sorry. I didn't realize that, we needed this other tank or whatever the situation may be. You have to realize that, people are joining your groups and they want to succeed. And if the quest or raid fails, then if it was your fault, you wasted people's time. And they're not going to want to join your groups if they see that you're consistently failing. But if you step up and say, I apologize, things didn't go as I intended, I think that people will at least respect you for that.
Yeah, both points very true. The only thing I would have to add is try and stay positive too, because even though you might not be in a great mood after failing a raid, at least it's good practice. So I'll usually just say if we wipe or something, I'll say, all right, good practice run. We know what not to do now.
Every failure is an opportunity to learn, and you will fail.
That's right. Yep.
Voodu and I, and I'm sure Lich has led some raids as well. Like, we've run a lot of raids. I have failed raids. Sometimes it's been my fault too. So it's okay. Everybody fails. Even the people that think they never do and they're really great and they always blame on a pug. Sometimes it's their fault and they fail. So that is part of the game. It sucks. We don't like failing, but it happens. So it's just the way it goes. I'm gonna say don't be unreasonable. And this kind of goes back to a couple points we had before. But I'm gonna give an example of I went and ran a shroud. I needed a shard on one of my characters, and the party leader wrote fast shroud. That was the comment. So we got to the end of the first phase, and I looted, and I went into part 2. So we're doing a fast shroud. And I started grabbing a bunch of trash in the maze and pulling to the south. And I'm killing it, fine. And suddenly the leader starts yelling at me because I'm not with the group. I'm going too fast. And I'm like, you said fast shroud. One, you said fast shroud. That was the expectation you put. So if you're going to put anything related to speed and going fast, quick, zerging, you have no ground to stand on yelling at someone for moving faster than you. You just don't. 2, like I pointed out, like, look, I'm just killing trash. I'm not starting out. I'm not ruining anything. And he continued to yell at me, and he didn't say anything like any bad words or anything. But he was very upset and was threatening to scold me. I'm like, dude, relax. One, I'm not ruining the raid. I know what I'm doing. I appreciate you can think maybe I don't. That's fine. We haven't run each other. But relax. You said fast shroud. That was the expectation. I'm trying to make things go faster. So that's an example of very poor leadership, because he's being very unreasonable about how he's interacting with me, particularly when he set expectations that I'm following. Right. So.
Yeah, sometimes personalities, and that's another thing you gotta remember when joining Pugs, I guess. There might just be a a bad apple in the bunch sometimes.
And sometimes there's two perfectly great people that just don't get along. It's no one's fault. Not the end of the world. Don't worry with them. Move on. Let's see. Should we move on to raids?
Sure.
So opening question is, what's different about leading a raid? Besides the number of people that you're leading.
The raids are usually a lot more intricate in terms of methods and what is required to complete, as well as what roles you need. Maybe you need tanks, maybe you need kiters, maybe you need 2 healers, and so on. That's a couple big differences between raids and quests.
The possibility of failure goes up a lot in some raids, especially like Titan. Anything with one and done mechanics. So leadership is, kind of optional in a PUG doing a quest and required in raids. Follow those patterns, and more importantly, as sad as this sounds to trying to do something brand new, usually people expect you to know the raid. So don't plan on leading a group and say, hey, I'm going to lead this, let's do this. Well, that could be fun once. People expect you to know the raid.
Particularly if it's not a new raid. When the raids are first coming out, there's a certain... Everyone kind of has this natural less expectation of knowing the intricate details of the raid. But generally, the way that raid knowledge kind of disseminates, we'll go a little rabbit hole here. Generally, the way that raid knowledge disseminates is a few people figured out on Lemania, or have devs show them on Lemania, or some sort of like that. And those are generally people that are going to be in guilds, and guilds are going to start like grabbing as many people as they can that they know, and kind of going in and figuring out the raid and figuring out their tactics. And then that generally gets disseminated across the server as those people interact with more PUGs, and those PUGs interact with more PUGs, and people start leading the raid, and that's kind of how the information only works. And I can say that I've actually been a part of that on Kyber. With Follow Truth, my guild kind of developed a few tactics and kind of a baseline strategy, and still to this day, the same order, the order that pretty much 99% of the population on Kyber runs Follow Truth, the order they kill the dragon pairs, is the same set that our raid leader determined through our early runs, which is kind of a bummer because I always like to run it differently.
I had a question along those same lines, just about Kyber. Specifically, when you're doing Caught in the Web and you're going up to the end fight, do you see people doing a lot of, or do you start with left?
You cut out there.
Well, do you see people saying don't go left at the end of Caught in the Web, or do you see people start with left?
It's more common these days that people avoid going left until Loth is down at the end fight.
Okay.
I kind of one thing that's with raids is we talked. Voodu was kind of mentioning this. You need to fill roles. So you need to figure out what key roles do you need filled. Usually that's going to be a tank, a couple of healers, probably a kiter. A lot of raids require some sort of kiting, or it's at least a very common tactic to kite. So you kind of have to keep in mind what you need. Do you need a rogue in the raid? I almost goofed that in Temple of Deathworm. Didn't bring a rogue. Luckily there was one guy who had just enough skills that you wouldn't know it by looking at his character, just looking at his name and what his character was, but he had rogue levels and he could do it. But I wasn't thinking about it, so that's kind of something you want to keep in mind. Do you need a rogue? Other traps you need to deal with.
Or an artificer.
Or an artificer. A trapper. With a trapper. Not all trappers are rogues. And not all rogues are trappers either. Although those people should consider reapplying their skill points.
And not all clerics are healers, right?
It's true. Not all clerics are healers. Although all clerics can heal and should consider how they can help. Right? But so think about your roles, Phil. And I'm going to say with that too, be open to some of that stuff. If you need a healer, bards can heal and druids can heal. I'm still not sure how this guy should, but I was giving someone some flack for not bringing a healer. They're doing epic hard Temple of Deathworm. Like boy, you going a little light on the healing there, and he says back that so and so is a professional healer. They've solo healed Epic Elite on Fall of Truth, and I look and it's level 20 barbarian.
What?
And I said to him, like, that's a level 20 barbarian. He's like, he's done it. Like, okay, well, we went back and forth, and we were just having fun, and it's totally fine. You can do it. He was using mostly Epic Destinies and Scrolls, which is fine. You can totally make that work. It's a trick, and I tip my hat to him, sir. But
that is interesting.
Got to fix that. But the end result that I basically said, well, that's a lousy barbarian. He needs to re-roll. It's kind of the end of that story. But be open to what builds can and can't do stuff. And you have to, unless you know the person, you probably have to go on their own assessment of their skills, which you may determine after the fact to not be accurate, and that's fine. That's happened to me a few times. I had to pick up the slack. It helps as a raid leader if you are running a character that can fulfill multiple roles. That can be really handy, although it's not always practical, and that's fine too. That's not something to be too concerned about, but something to keep in mind. So keep in mind what you need, what roles you need to fill. You need to pick tactics. That's kind of a big thing. Pick the tactics. There's a lot of different ways that you can run a lot of the raids. Pick a tactic. We're talking about Fall of Truth. Pick an order of the dragon pairs. There are better. I think there's better orders and worse orders, but pick an order. That's the big thing. It doesn't really matter which order you go in, but you got to pick a way to do it, right? So that's kind of big. Task assignment. You need to tell people what they're doing. What role are they fulfilling in the raid? Not just like tanking roles, but okay, we've got a tank, we've got a healer. Okay, you tank, go tank this guy. You go kite this guy. You 4 people DPS the dragon. You 3 people deal with trash. Right? Like you have to assign tasks, and you need to be ready to be flexible as people perish. You might need to throw people under the bus and do things that might stretch their design intent and what they think their player skills are. And that's okay. Going back to the question, what's a good leader? A good leader pushes people to be better. And not just yourself, but the rest of the party. And don't be afraid to stretch the envelope. This is probably more of an experience tip for more experienced leader. But don't be afraid to push the idea of what people think they can or can't do and how to do something. Like that's totally fine to do that, and it's good. It pushes people to be better. Don't be afraid to put someone new in a role. That's how people learn. You probably want to have a backup if they're new to it, but let people try new things. It makes the server and the population and the rating scene better.
I would say you might want to try to avoid telling people how to play their characters when it's really explicit and really specific. Generally, people will know what to do, and other people won't like it if you, for instance, say you need to do this by doing specifically X, Y, and Z. Just give them general tasks, and preferably assignments are better typed just in case people didn't hear you or you need to reference back to the order. Some people might not like that, though, because if one of these people messes up, then we have written proof. But also be vocal. Got to be able to call that audible if something goes hairy.
Audibles are important, particularly in raids. Particularly in ones where they get kind of crazy, and something happens that you didn't really expect. you got to roll with the punches. Rally the group, that can be a big challenge. And sometimes you need help from other people, and if I've been the guy that's we've been in a raid. The leader's been sufficient, but not fantastic, and things go sideways, and then it's like, oh well, this raid is done. I'm like, no, we can do this, and I've stepped in and rallied the group and push us towards a victory. And, it happens. It may not be you, but don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to let someone else help you either.
Knowing what to do in a raid when things go wrong is huge, because it's easy to lead a raid when everybody knows what they're doing and everything goes fine. But sometimes things are going to go poorly, and knowing how to back up the tank or what to do when things go wrong. Have one person kite all the mobs while everybody regroups. And one of the ways to prepare for that, and I think if you're serious, if you really want to be a raid leader, I think one of the important things to do is to join as many different PUGs of that raid as you can. See what methods people are using. See what works. See what doesn't work. See what's causing groups to fail. Yeah, big time. If you see something, if you see a group fail, make sure you learn from that and realize why they failed, and make sure not to make those mistakes in your raids.
Yep.
And ask questions.
Very good tips.
So too, if you really want to be serious about leading any particular raid, as much as possible, try and get experience doing the different roles. If you want to run Fallout Truth a lot, maybe it means joining other people's groups, but get some experience tanking the Storm Reaver, get some experience tanking Truth 1, get some experience kiting the Spectrals around. Get an idea of what's that like, and learn. Maybe ask some other people. If you see other people doing that stuff, ask them what are some tips you have for that specific role after the quest is over, and kind of build up that knowledge so you can pass it on to the other folks. Yeah. So, any last tips for leading PUGs and/or raids? Closing thoughts?
Don't forget, games are for having fun, not a job.
That's a very good tip. Have fun. Leading can be fun.
Stay positive. Yep. I mentioned earlier, be respectful about people are spending their time in your groups, and you don't want to waste their time. Sometimes people are only playing an hour or two a night, and they don't want to spend half that time failing a raid.
Yep. So have fun. Be brave. Is kind of I'll say a closing thought. Don't be afraid to try leading a PUG. And don't be afraid to try leading a PUG a second time after your first time failed miserably. You'll get better at it with practice, and everyone had to start leading PUGs somewhere. You don't have to be the best PUG leader ever to lead a PUG either. There are definitely people that are more adept and comfortable and used to leading, and that's totally fine. That doesn't have to be you. That doesn't mean you can't lead a PUG. It doesn't mean you can't lead a raid. So
there is one other method that I guess I like to employ in my raids, and that is to quarterback it the whole way. You'll find even when you have experienced players, because there are so many different techniques or methods of doing a particular raid, and even if you said, here's the method we're going to do, if you call out the shots as it's happening, it keeps everybody on the same page. It lowers confusion. Sometimes people sort of drift off and aren't paying attention, but, like if you're doing fires on Thunder Peak, North Dragon's Magma, Dragon DPS South now, and just so that you're keeping the raid flowing, everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing at every time. That doesn't mean you have to give every last little detail, but just cue people in, okay, now we're going to go do this. Now we're going to go over here, and so on and so forth, can really help things flow along really well. And people appreciate it. And like I said, it helps to eliminate confusion because there are multiple ways of doing these raids. And if you're calling out the shots, that way everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing.
Actually, brings up a good point that I want to touch a little more on is keeping the party focused can be a really big task. There's a couple of things. One, if two people are having a side conversation that's really distracting or not relevant, if you're doing a raid particularly, maybe ask them, hey, we need to focus a little bit more here. The other thing is, it really helps people, and I've noticed this a lot in Follow Truth, but even more so in the Fire Peaks raid, give people specific tasks. It helps keep them focused and they know what they're doing. If you listen to the Fire Peaks walkthrough I did a couple episodes ago, one thing that I pointed out, you've got 12 people in the raid. 2 people are going to be on a dragon. 2 people are probably going to be healing. From those people, assign people to either you're attacking the dragons, or you're attacking trash. It just helps keep them focused. It lets them know what they need to do specifically. They don't have to think about am I supposed to be on the dragon now? Am I on the trash now? Am I on the dragon? When am I on the dragon? When am I on the trash? Just make it as easy as possible for folks to know what they're going to be doing, and it just makes everything go a lot smoother. People are, there's a lot of pugs out there that they're not really familiar with the raid. They don't know the nuances, and that's totally fine. Just giving them a specific overarching task that they can just kind of like a fallback. If you don't know what you're going to do, kill trash. Something like that can really help focus a couple of pugs that don't really know what they're doing and are getting distracted and confused about what's going on. So, just a quick tip. All right. Survey question for the week. Justinius asks, what does an epic shaman kobold do when it panics? We'll start with Voodu.
Well, he screams yark yark or disfrabadoo.
All right. Lich?
He eats copious amounts of kobold butter.
So he casts darkness
Nice.
on himself. Seems to be my general experience. All right, guys. I'm going to say thanks to Lich and Voodu for joining me today, and thanks for listening to the show. Thanks to everyone else who's working on the show with us. Appreciate Lich joining the team here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. We love having new guests. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, send us an email at DDOCast@gmail.com. Or if you want to say anything else, if you want to be part of the show, you can just say hi. You can email us at DDOCast.com. Thanks to Turbine and Wizards for making D&D and DDO. Thanks to Cybers for listening to the podcast. You can hit us up at DDOcast.com for show notes, calendar, previous shows, swag, and other fun stuff. You can also find us on social media and follow us for other cast updates. A closing tip. This comes from Ruin Rock. All his characters bind in the 12 because the airship tower is right there. A handy tip, particularly since there is going to be a bind point on the new airships, but it is currently not really functional, unfortunately. Let's see. So until next time, all your attack rolls for crits, all your trust level report, have fun, and don't forget to take a chance at leading. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Y'all have a good one.